Right, I think everybody's pretty much here, so I'll monitor as we go on. But good morning, all. Welcome to Hills Green's Rural Roundtable. Nice to see so many familiar faces and some new faces on the call. So this morning we're talking about savvy businesses. So it's great to see that there's a lot of savvy businesses on the call. And in light of the pandemic, all getting quite excited that the beer gardens and probably more important for me, the barbers are going to be opening very shortly. Spring is in the air, and hopefully things are looking a lot more positive than they were this time last year. So we're taking the opportunity really to look at what this means for your business, what's changed, and how you can adapt, your business to suit this sort of changing marketplace that we're in post-pandemic. So I have got my colleague Justin, who's going to be running the session this morning, and I'll introduce him shortly. But the first thing I would like to do this morning is over to you. And there is quite a few people on the call, so don't worry, I'm not going to go around everybody this morning. But it would be good, I will pick on a few people just to introduce yourself, your name, the business that you are working for. And most importantly, I'd like to know what's your biggest concern for your business post the pandemic. Who have we got on here that I can pick on? So Ben from BCL, would you like to just introduce yourself and probably share with the group what you do and what's your biggest concern post pandemic?
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. Okay, my name is Ben. My business is business cost reduction. I've had my business for over 10 years. What I do is I go into businesses and I help them with their essential spend. So my areas of speciality is mainly energy, is negotiating contracts for businesses. I do a little bit of telecom, some insurance, and some office supplies as well. So I'm kind of going in and taking that off people's desks. My biggest concern, we have a lot of owner-managed businesses, a lot of rural businesses, and hospitality. It's really just getting out and meeting my customers and meeting my new people. I live in a business which is there's quite a lot of sharks around in it, quite a lot of cold calling. I don't do any of that. All my business is by referral and, sort of subtle marketing. So it's very important I get out and network, and that means meeting people face to face. Dun, dun, dun. So yeah, that's really been the hardest thing for me during lockdown, and it's going to be the hardest thing going forward.
Okay, thanks Ben for sharing. I'll pick on somebody else. Christine Vaughan, you're in the centre of my screen. Would you like to just introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Christine Vaughan. I'm an accountant. I've got my own business. I deal with a lot of SMEs, so it's the smaller businesses. Been on my own now for about nearly 10 years. And I think the biggest thing for me is actually helping to support businesses to actually get themselves back on the feet. Like Ben just said, I deal with hospitality, I deal with the leisure industry. Some of the businesses that I deal with have survived very well and haven't really been impacted by COVID, and yet others have been completely wiped off the feet by it. So I think there's a very diverse infrastructure out there, and we've got to meet the needs of each individual business. So it's actually looking, at each individual business and seeing how we can pull each individual business back out of wherever they are and sustain growth for those that, haven't been particularly affected.
Perfect. Thanks, Christine. And Duncan, I know you work with a number of businesses. Do you want to just introduce yourself and give your thoughts on sort of concerns for businesses post-pandemic?
Yes, good morning all. I'm Duncan Jones. I've got Cardinal Coaching which would give you a hint to what I do. So I work with boards, chief execs, senior management, some within agriculture, airways, which is rather quiet at the moment, shipping, which again is rather quiet unless you're stuck in the Suez Canal. But generally at the moment, I'm trying to go into semi-retirement. I was going to retire, which I've done 3 times, but I get so utterly bored, and my wife says she's going to kill me if I don't move off my backside and do something, which shows a relationship for 40 odd years. So it's quite interesting. My concern, speaking with people at the moment, is the effect that COVID and what is happening to people. Some have taken to home working extremely well. My son is in the office next door to me, and he loves it, but he's antisocial anyway. My other son, who's an extrovert and very much like me, is missing the social scene, and he said he's tired of drinking with himself in the mirror. So it is these issues. Within agriculture, which I seem to end up, because I started my career in agriculture with a little company called Spillers, and I seem to be ending my career back involved with agriculture. I work with 4 farmers, which is a challenging thing, DSM and some other, either pharmaceutical, but mainly feed companies. For the past 8 years, I've worked with a genetics company called Cogent. So I've seen the changes that they've had and the input when they've had a fantastic investment from ST in America, which gave them sex semen as well, which gave them the edge against their competitors. But speaking to all of them, it's the intersocial side of actually face-to-face. So Ben was sort of saying about cold calling and meeting people. A lot of business is face-to-face, but we have to change. I used Zoom when I was working with Saudi Arabian companies and got very much used to it, particularly on a Sunday morning, which they seem to like working, not realizing what happens in the UK. But it is the fact that actually, or as the Americans used to say, flesh to flesh. And I think that is going to have an effect on people. Marketing is going to be even more important, and how we get that attention, and more important, the desire to actually purchase services or products. So I'm probably a little bit whitehead and probably oldest amongst all of you as I just scanned through all the pictures. So I will shut up there and listen to your ideas and hope to learn something. So thank you.
Thanks, Duncan. Maybe oldest, but definitely very wise. Bryony Petty, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Bryony, and I work for an agricultural sales company up in Perthshire, Scotland, called Powered Pasture. We specialise in selling electric fences to and systems, specifically to rotational grazing, mob grazing, and hill block grazing farmers. We're based on a 1,000-hectare beef, sheep, and deer farm up here, and my biggest kind of it's more adapting, really. We're trying to adapt to what farmers' buyer behaviours and patterns are going to be kind of post-COVID. Obviously, they're used to seeing reps on the road and everything, but their buying behaviour is changing. They're going to a lot more web sales. So how, do we adapt as a company to kind of target, that market? And also, farmers, their thought processes are changing now. There's a lot of sustainability in agriculture now, so it's adapting our business really to target those kind of farmers, and keep promoting our company out there and growing following.
Perfect, thanks Bryony. And I'll just pick on one more person before we kick off. Alice Renner.
Sorry, lost my voice there. So I'm Alice Renner. I work for Excel Vets, which is a membership organisation for independently owned vets across the country. We're all species. I mainly work on the farm side of it. So it's kind of how our practices have had to adapt to going on farm, and procedures that they would normally do with the whole farming family around them, and how they've had to adapt their working ways to kind of be a one-man band rather than go out as a team, and also how students are going to work within the veterinary practice going forward, as a lot of them haven't been able to get their placements because of COVID. and kind of how that connection is going to work with them coming into the veterinary industry, and also the level of farmer training that we do, and how face-to-face farmer training will either start up again, or whether this is going to be web-based going forward, and whether our members can target wider audiences if they can use more web-based systems. So that's kind of our thoughts.
Perfect. Thanks, Alice. And I think, hopefully that's actually just given a flavour to everybody, the sort of challenges that we're facing, and probably a lot of us can relate to those challenges as well. So I'd now like to introduce Justin Butcher, who's our strategy partner here at Hills Green. Just working out yesterday, I think I've known and worked with Justin for well over 10 years now. Justin's got an interesting background. Don't hold it against him, but he's a southerner at heart. Owned his own photography business before moving up north to Manchester, where I met him, and we worked as part of the leadership team for a digital marketing agency, which we grew from a startup business to 30 strong business. We've both obviously since left there. I set up Hills Green, and Justin set up his own consultancy business, working with a variety of online businesses, supporting with their digital marketing strategy, and ultimately helping them either grow their sales or grow their leads online. And like I say, he works with a number of Hills Green clients as well. He's definitely a data man at heart. I know when the pandemic hit, everybody was getting quite nervous, particularly in terms of what was going to happen. What did this mean for our clients? What did it mean for our businesses? Justin just got very excited because with the pandemic, there's no rule book. And he was just really interested to see what was going to happen. And he actually did his own data modelling, and I think predicted the second wave within a couple of weeks. So, move over Chris Whitty, I suppose. But that's probably enough of an introduction for you, Justin. As we go through, if everyone could just keep themselves on mute. If anybody's got any burning questions, if you drop as a note on chat, and I will interject. Other than that, we will have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So over to you, Justin.
Okay. Hi, guys. Let me just get my screen up. All right, bear with me.
You're better at data than you are with sharing your screen.
Not very good at Zoom. Hold on a second. Is there any reason why the presentation isn't coming up as an option?
Not sure, Justin.
Right, I'm there. Sorry, guys. Okay, so the way I've structured this is I'm going to go through 3 real-life case studies of businesses that were affected in mostly a very positive way by the pandemic, but all 3 of them had problems which the pandemic exposed. So all 3 of them didn't actually do as well as they could have done, but they all did very, very well out of it. Now, the reason they're all e-commerce businesses, and the reason for that is that it just so happens that my client base at the moment is mostly e-commerce. And also I've chosen these ones because the data was quite interesting. So I'll go through those. I've then picked out 5 issues or things that those and other businesses that I speak to or work with are talking about the most, to see if that tallies up with what any of you guys are thinking about at the moment. And then I will end with just a very simple example. I'll take one of those 5 considerations, top considerations, which is around getting to know customers again, because their behaviors change quite a lot in probably most niches. Online behaviors just completely changed across the board. And I'll take an example of how you can turn just a small piece of customer or audience insight into a load of action, which you can then load of action which will hopefully improve stuff for your business. And I've actually used because it's Hills Green, I've used farming supplies as an example. Okay, so and also it's not very long, and the reason it's not a very long presentation is because I've done one of these before, and I think people got more value from the questions at the end than from the presentation itself. Not to say that the presentation was bad, but I found it really useful, and the feedback from that was that the Q&A was very useful, so I'm allowing some time for that at the end. Okay, case study number 1. This business, it's e-commerce, pure e-commerce. They sell it online through their own website. They also sell through marketplaces like Amazon and eBay. They do the odd telephone sale, but it's nearly 100% online sales. And they sell outdoor furniture, highly seasonal business. And for them, the lockdown / pandemic was a business changing. It's been a business changing thing for them in a positive way. So I don't know if any of you guys have tried to buy outdoor furniture recently, but you won't get any. There just isn't any. It's all out of stock everywhere. And the timing of the pandemic couldn't have been better for them, because it came right at the beginning of their season, which happens kind of from the second half of March and kind of ends August, September time. And what happened then was, when everyone realized they were going to be confined to their homes and not going on holiday and that sort of thing, the demand for anything to do with gardens, home improvements, nesting, basically, just went through the roof. So these guys saw 145% increase in year-on-year sales, which is nice. And this year, their season started 2 months early, basically in February. And actually, if you remember when it was quite nice weather towards the end of February, they had their record ever day in February, which is just unheard of. Normally, in a normal year, pre-pandemic, February would be pretty dead. So it looks like they're going to have another similar, similarly good season this year as well. And the benefit that one of the big benefits that they've had from this as well, it's not just revenue, but they've increased profit for several reasons, but one of which being that they pretty much on some lines doubled prices, and it didn't it didn't dampen down sales at all. People were still prepared to pay for it because the demand for it was so high, and everywhere was out of stock, and people were still buying it in the knowledge that they wouldn't be getting the product for at least 2 months. The other thing that happened was that conversion rates increased massively, which had the impact of you know, getting more sales for every pound spent, so it reduced their acquisition costs. So that also has a positive impact on their profitability. These guys spend in peak season, we're talking 6-figure sums per month on paid search, for example. They usually, in a normal year, have a business issue whereby it's absolutely dead from October, November onwards until March. But during that period, they have to be stocking up for the summer. So that causes them normally big cash flow issues, but that was completely eliminated this year. They're awash with cash. However, it wasn't all sweetness and light. So it exposed, I consider them to be incredibly lucky that they basically were completely out of stock by mid-May. And because all their supply comes from China, it's a 3-month lead time. And so they run out of stock so quickly that obviously they weren't prepared for it. And so they were pretty much ordering the stock as all the other stock was running out. So they had to, any customer that ordered, it was a pre-order, and they would have to wait 2-3 months for that stock to come in. Now, they were lucky because all of their major competitors have had the same problem at exactly the same time. Had that not been the case, they would have been killed off. It also, it exposed their weak, the demand planning weakness, which was pretty much, embarrassingly for an online business, was pretty much the founder of the company to kind of stick his finger in the air and guess how much product they were going to need. Believe it or not, it was a bit more complex than that, but not much more. And so their team are currently working on a AI-driven demand planning methodology, which basically, as the data comes in, it predicts much faster and much earlier on how much stock they're going to need in X months' time. Another thing which is a concern to them and is that obviously it looks like they're going to have a similar year to what they had last year this year, and so they're having to get bodies in to service the extra demand, but it's a risk if in 2022 similar levels of demand don't materialize because they'll have too many bodies. And so they have hired some full-time staff to help them with this extra demand. Now they're not going to get any more in, and they're going to get freelance support in for certain things, but they still think it's a bit of a risk if the sales levels aren't, you know, if they're like only 75% of what they are this year, they may need to let some people go. Okay, so case study number 2. This isn't a pure e-commerce brand. This is they have a hybrid distribution, so it's a baby brand, so they sell through the likes of big retailers such as Asda, Argos, places like that. They used to sell through Mothercare until it went bust. They also sell through a network of independent online and offline retailers, and they also sell on their own website, which is what I've been helping them with, because they were trying to they had an idea that they wanted to make more direct sales through their own website, and as you can see there, their direct to consumer web sales are up 182% year on year. Website sales became the top sales source by miles, and whereas pre-COVID it was actually the third biggest source of revenue. So direct web sales have done incredibly well. So a lot of it was to do with the work that went on pre-pandemic. So they were ready to receive extra demand, but the demand did increase for certain, not all, but for their top selling product types. Demand went through the roof. Now they also did well because they had already had a pre-existing flexible working culture. So for example, they have a policy whereby you can take as much holiday as you want as long as all the work gets done. If you're not feeling up to going to work because you're feeling sad, don't go in. They have you can work from home whenever you want or come into the office whenever you want. It's up to you. So incredibly flexible working culture, and they adapted very, very easily to these new working conditions, work from home. So most people actually used to go into the office, but because they, some people, just worked from home once a week, something like that, and they were used to just doing video calls when they were working from home, so it wasn't anything really particularly novel for them at all. And actually, when everybody started working from home, they actually became much more disciplined, much more collaborative, and productivity did improve considerably, which is an interesting case study on work from home, this one. They also did well because there were some bigger competitors who didn't change, they didn't seize upon the opportunity for direct to consumer sales at the beginning of the pandemic, and this brand were able to actually make quite a lot of inroads into market share as a result, and nabbed quite a lot of sales from their competing brands whose own websites where they were selling direct were rubbish and not up to scratch, because they were so reliant on their network of retailers for sales that they hadn't really bothered with their own website. Also, they benefited from, they used some of their extra profit to invest in an upgrade. They had creaking website technology. It was a website that used to crash if you blew on it. It really was in dire need of an upgrade, so it allowed that to happen. And also they've invested in some predictive analytics capability. So that basically allows them to give a different on-site journey. So the technology predicts when the user lands on the site according to what that user's done on the site before. It predicts where they want to go next and shows them that instead of the standard journey. So basically everybody has a different journey on the site. The weaknesses that were exposed by the pandemic, the web team resource was actually pretty inadequate pre-COVID. So the web team was seen as like the upstart little brat sibling, and they were pretty much ignored in the business when I first started working with these guys, and now they're like kings. They're the kings there. Anyway, it's been addressed, but it did expose that there weren't enough people to be working with the kind of revenues that website now generates. Also, the non-web teams were slower to react to the new scenario. So these are the guys who would say working with, you know, the shops, the offline retailers, and they were just sitting there twiddling their thumbs and didn't really adapt their roles at first, but that was actually rectified over time. And they had a big problem before UK was in lockdown, but when China was in lockdown with supply, because China basically closed their factories for a few weeks. So it was difficult to get supply over for some key lines.
Justin, just got a question from Ken. Would you like to take yourself off mute and just ask it?
Technology, I couldn't get myself off mute. Hi, Justin.
Hello.
How much do you think that people have felt forced to go down the e-commerce line and are desperate to go back to face-to-face meetings? And how much do you think people have actually found this new way of researching and buying by their own discretion has suited them? What are your thoughts?
Sorry, do you mean in terms of
Purchases?
customers?
Yeah, customers that have gone out there, normally they'd nip to, like you say, Mother Can, and that brat's now gone. But, you know, in the past, that would have been their first choice, probably. And they probably now, I'm probably picking on the wrong demographic there, probably mums who are at home have probably got their hands full and are happy to sit and click on a keyboard rather than visit shops because they haven't got the time to. But maybe the general public for a lounger for the patio, that's probably something people like to go and sit on and feel if it felt comfortable and see how well it was made in the past, against taking an online risk of thinking, well, it looks comfy, but it could be not what I expect. How much do you think people have now gone that direction?
For in this particular niche, there's no sign of any let up in online demand.
Okay.
The one thing I will say though is what you do see, or what we have seen with this particular brand, is online sales were they were a lot slower than expected based on what we'd seen in the immediately preceding months. At the beginning of December, and it coincided with shops opening, and it was for about a week. Now it came back strong, and actually December overall turned out to be a pretty good month for them. So what we think happened there was that it was pre-Christmas, that the shops have been closed for the whole of November, and there is a big demand to go to actual shops pre-Christmas time. It's just a thing that people want to do. So we think that it wasn't that they were going to buy this brand's products offline, it was just that they were going shopping in shops rather than spending their money online. The other thing we did see a slowdown with these guys, the recent back to school for about a week. So that dampened down sales. But that can be explained by, you know, it's just a change to what their routine had been for the preceding period of time. So generally speaking, there's no real sign in the let up on the online demand.
Thanks.
But as you say, I mean, for a lot of this audience, you're right, it would be easier just to do it online. But not only that, they do it on their phones. So
Yeah.
it's 86% of the sales come through mobile phones.
Yeah. I think these are not a technical purchase as such if you're buying a garden swing sort of thing, which is, I think that's probably a really good way of doing it. You know, they've got the opportunity to sit there and compare Amazon versus eBay versus whoever.
Yeah.
Quite easily. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Just conscious of time, Justin.
Sorry, am I rambling on?
Well,
I'm only on case study 2.
Just want to get into the meaty stuff of what you think is going to happen.
I'll go through this one a bit more quickly because some of the issues are the same. So these guys saw a 75% increase in year-on-year sales. This is an e-commerce brand. They did have a shop. They closed it. They were actually technically allowed to open it because it counted as pet, but they decided to close it anyway because online sales were growing so massively. They didn't really need to open it. The 75% I see as a wasted opportunity for reasons I'll come on to. They did manage to gobble up a load of market share from companies below them, but they're pretty much probably number 2 in the online market in this niche. And they didn't really make a dent on the number 1 because they grew probably at about the same rate. So they were heavily reliant on promotional activity for sales and price cutting to stimulate sales. So they didn't need to do that anymore and didn't need to do that until their season ended. So margins went up 5%, 38 to 43%. They also have a similar cash flow issue in wintertime normally, but that was completely eliminated. And yeah, again, they're upgrading their website technology, so it's allowed them to do that. Weaknesses, so they had a lack of marketing resource, which is actually what I was helping them with when the pandemic struck, and then it was quite difficult to get to do recruiting at the beginning of the pandemic. So they brought people in now, but they did have they didn't have enough people, and it made it hard to take full advantage without that resource. Totally inefficient warehouse operations were massively exposed, and the guy who was in charge wasn't capable of dealing with it. So they've been through a couple of other people since then, but they're dealing with it now. But that's a technological solution that they're implementing that will massively improve things, but it's taking ages. So they had to increase their delivery times from next day to 3 to 4 days, which dampened down their conversion rate. They also had to switch their PPC ads off, incidentally, because the surge was so strong at the beginning. Customer service teams are overwhelmed, so they had cancellations in orders, and they had, you know, bad social media comments and things like that. They actually turned the phones off at one point. And they have a very rigid working culture. The boss doesn't really like people working from home, and they didn't have laptops with cameras on. They were given like big full desktops with no cameras, so there was no easy way to communicate. Okay, so from those guys, from speaking to those guys and other clients, there are things that I hear time and time again, and I'll give you the top 5. There's a big realization that they need to accelerate digital, not just like online sales digital, but digitizing all processes across the business, because they've realized how the pandemic has shone a light on how inefficient some of their processes are. A lot of these things that these businesses had them, you know, kind of in their plans, where they kept putting it off, and they were forced to introduce these things. It's probably brought the future forward for some of these businesses by 3 to 5 years. But once they make that investment, they're going to benefit massively in terms of increased productivity and efficiency, profitability, etc., etc. This applies to 2 of those case studies in particular, the first and the third one. And the sort of questions that would be useful to ask yourself: what business processes can we improve through increased digitization? Could we improve our online presence? Could we use technology to improve communication with our customers? That's a big one. Do we have the in-house skills needed to accelerate digitization in key areas? Number 2, workforce transformation. This is huge, especially for young employees. So basically, a lot of people have had the taste of work from home, and they like it, and they don't want to give it up. And a lot of businesses don't want it, they want people in. And in e-commerce in particular, there's a lot of businesses doing very well, and there are a lot of jobs around, and people will just go to the place where they offer that flexibility. So one of those companies has just lost a couple of people for this very reason, that they won't compromise on this. So couple of questions to ask yourself: could we feasibly offer more flexible working arrangements for our employees, and do we have the technology to facilitate it? Customer intelligence. So the customers' needs and habits have changed during the pandemic. Some of that behavioural change is temporary. An example of that is company number 2. We saw the weirdest data in terms of, you know, they used to be 90% mobile traffic, and then it suddenly overnight was only about 60% for a period of time. And what we worked out was it was all the furloughed people on their work laptops browsing the site. That was a temporary change. Purchases were brought forward in the day. Similarly, we think it was for similar reasons. That was a temporary change. It went back to normal after a while. Other behaviours, like just the sheer numbers of people searching for certain things online hasn't relented for in a lot of niches. It's just carried on, even when the shops were open in the summer. It didn't really dent online demand for a lot of businesses that I have seen. It's important to understand try to work out what are the temporary changes in behavior and which are the sticky behaviors. So questions to ask yourself around this is if customer needs shift rapidly again, are we agile enough to detect and respond to it as it happened? A lot of businesses felt they're a bit slow to react to stuff. Is our online presence catering to new customer demands? And how do we convey trust to prospective customers if their first interaction with our business is likely to be online? Another one, I mention it just because I hear it all the time, is that there is quite a lot of businesses are very wary of costs getting out of control, because especially business 1 and 3 being seasonal businesses, they quite liked having cash flow in out of season for a change. That's one reason. But also I think a lot of businesses are they want to be better prepared for if there's an unanticipated disruption to business again in the future, and so they're trying to keep reserves of cash there. So questions that businesses are asking: where can we increase margins? What can we automate to boost productivity? And how can we cut costs while preserving our quality of service? And the other thing that's happening is that there is a certain amount of rethinking of supply chains. This isn't just about COVID and problems that they might have had with China or anticipated future problems with China supply chain, but also Brexit is another contributor to that. They've had for customers who sell stuff in Europe, they've had terrible trouble getting the product to Europe. So that's a big consideration. And you know, the boat that got stuck in the Suez Canal, business number 3 had about 9 containers on that boat. So things like that happen every now and then that make them think that they need to start looking at their supply chains. So they're trying to work out what's their current level of risk and are there any benefits to sourcing products closer to home. Okay, finally, I'm going to take one of those things which businesses are talking about quite a lot, which is the change in customer behavior. And I'm going to use a very simple example of just how a small bit of data can lead to a lot of action that you can take to help grow your business. So I've used the example of, and I was inspired by Hills Green's farmer survey, where they answered questions about their online habits. And I was looking at this one bit of data that said 30% of respondents saying that they only 30% saying they choose to buy or sell farm supplies and equipment online occasionally, and that seemed a bit low to me. So I took the top 358 keywords related to farm supplies and plugged that into Google's keyword planner tool to see what's happened to search volumes for those keywords over time. And as you can see there, around the time of first lockdown, you see a big spike in the numbers of people searching for that, which kind of goes down a little bit, but it's gone up again with other lockdowns. At the bottom the bottom chart there is a Google Trends chart just for the farm supplies keyword, just that keyword on its own, which shows a similar kind of pattern. So it does seem to suggest that there's been a big uptick in user searching for farm supply related keywords since initial lockdowns, and that our business, this fictional business, should be more visible for this group of users if they want to increase business. Then looking at keyword intent, so basically taking all of those 350 whatever keywords, plugging it into a language analysis tool, it shows that a lot of people, when using those keywords, stick the phrase near me on the end, so they're looking for local businesses, which means that Google will, for a lot of those keyword searches, infer local intent, i.e. they're looking for a business close to their current location. So what that tells us is that it'll probably be a good idea to invest in some local SEO work so that you can appear in that area of the search results, as well as standard SEO work, which would allow you to appear in the results just below those, but also that you can see that there's a competitor there bidding on those keywords and paid search. So to stop them from stealing all the clicks from people searching for that keyword, it would make sense to test some PPC. What the Hills Green survey also said was that 73% of farmers browse social media daily, and also that the most popular platform that they're looking at is Facebook. So doing some searches for local businesses on social media offering farm supplies. We see these guys here, Chelford Farm, who have 45k plus fans on their Facebook page, and also we can see that there's another business there who are using paid social media. So from that, you've got a bit of data that says farmers are on it every day, and you've got, well, there's competitors there, pretty prominent, and there's guys paying to be there too. So it should be something we should be looking at. So yeah, we'll probably focus on paid social media because building a large Facebook audience can be time consuming, very time consuming, or expensive if you want to pay to do it. And the Hills Green survey also said that 86% of farmers check emails daily. So that's an interesting piece of information. So they're active on email. So this fictional business realized that we haven't actually done anything on our email list for a while. So we're probably missing a trick there. So how about we combine the paid social activity and use that to build our email list, and let's create the ultimate guide to farm supplies, and use lead gen ads, which basically give you the guide to download once you've given an email address. And finally, whilst browsing through Google Analytics data, we noticed that the landing page for farm supplies has a much lower conversion rate than the average for the site as a whole. So if we were to install some heat mapping software onto the website and to see how users are interacting with key elements on the page, we can then try and work out, well, what's the block? What are the blockers to conversion here? Why aren't people converting? And making necessary changes to try and get the conversion rate up to the site average. And if we were to do so, that would mean even without increasing traffic to that page, we could get 3 times more conversions from it.